Hello! So, in this video we're going to be talking about graphing, and in particular the strengths and weaknesses of graphing. So, a lot of math classes tend to sort of emphasize graphing as a technique and tool, but there's not necessarily a lot of talk of why we would graph something or when it would be useful. So, really, there are sort of some very important sort of good things about graphing and some very important not good things about graphing. So generally speaking, the reason why we want to do graphing, use graphing, have graphing, so these sort of strengths or pros. So for graphing, it's really useful for finding or seeing sort of big picture aspects. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that are things like seeing if something has, so if there are things like extrema, these are maximums or minimums. Also things like discontinuities, and what kind of discontinuities. You also might want to look and see where, for example, some intercepts are. Namely, say, where the zeros are. Okay. But, and this is a pretty big sort of asterisk on this, the weakness of graphs is something that sort of I've been harping on a lot lately, which is that graphs are sort of inherently not precise. What I mean by that is, if we have a graph, right, so let's say, for example, I have a graph, right, so this is the typical XY plane, which we'll actually even talk about more later. So some input variable, some output variable, and we have some graph where we've sort of modeled out some piece, right? And this is, let's say, profits over a fiscal year, right? So on the one hand, looking at this from a year-long standpoint, I can look at this and say, okay, well, early in the year we sort of dipped down, but sort of later in the year we trended upward, and then we dipped back down at the end of the year. So maybe, you know, sort of end of December, like Christmas or whatever, like that time period isn't something our company seems to be doing so well. So maybe we're not a retail or some sort of, you know, gift-oriented company or selling gifts. But at the same time, you know, a little bit prior to that, we did pretty well, maybe in October or something, right? So sort of at a big level, at a big picture level, I get some information here about when the company does well versus when it does, you know, not as well. Where are the sort of dips versus peaks of our profits? At the same time, if I'm like, okay, well, the highest point of the profit seems to be about here. Well, the question is, what is that? I mean, even if I put in a tick for every day, that would be 365 ticks. You think I could fit that many with a marker this thick? Probably not, right? And even if I could, the chances that I landed on one of them exactly is basically none. So really, that should correlate to some, you know, time of day, but how accurate could I really get that time? Is it a specific day, specific hour, minute, seconds? How much do I care? That's another good question, right? Do I need it to the second? And I'm back. Sorry, technical difficulties. So as I was saying, you know, can we get it to the day, hour, minute, second? Do we care if it's to the day, hour, minute, second, right? So if we did want it to the second, then we need precision. We need something that is very precise, by which I mean we can narrow it down sort of as specific as we want. And that has nothing necessarily to do with the accuracy of the graph. The graph can be very accurate, right? This could exactly sort of show what the different points are throughout the year without it being without me being able to precisely pull stuff out of that information, right? So the big sort of problem or downside to graphs is that they're not precise. And in fact, for precision, so for precision, we need sort of analytic methods. In this class, mainly, not entirely, but mainly for our class, that means doing things algebraically, solving for something. Whereas with graphs, can't really do that. Now the strength, like I said, we do get the big picture idea. We get trends. We see, dip and grow and dip. And, depending on what we're modeling, there might be other things of interest, like where it goes and hits zero, right? If my profit hits zero, that's pretty important to know, right? But new companies often start in the red and get up to the black, right? So it is very possible that I have something down here and going up, and where the profit hits zero is your sort of break-even point. You're finally starting to be in the black. You're finally starting to make money. And so, finding that actual point is helpful, and knowing it exists is helpful, right? That's the point of graphing. So here, I want to stress that I'm not claiming that graphing is bad and algebra is good. They are simply used for very different things, and that's sort of the key sort of premise that's going to be coming up over the next few videos. Okay? All right, with that, we are all set.